Welcome to the Touching into Presence podcast.
This podcast is for people who are interested in bodywork, empowerment, and somatic-based practices.
I am Nikki Olson.
I'm Andrew Rosenstock.
We are certified Rolfers.
Collectively, we're trained in various movement and bodywork therapies with an emphasis on somatic awareness and client resilience.
Through conversations, our goal is to share and explore mind-body paradigms to offer empowerment possibilities.
It was a pleasure to be in conversation with Thomas Walker and Gale Loveitt today. Gale and Thomas are longtime bodyworkers, both Rolfers and Biodynamic Craniosacral therapists. Thomas is on the faculty of the Rolf Institute, and they both teach somatic education through listening hand seminars. Additionally, they are life partners. I was calling in from Dubai and my internet connection was not great, which brought some static spots as well as me dropping in and out. I apologize for any sound issues from this. Today we talk about their history in Rolfing and moving towards a biodynamic approach. What is biodynamics? When to Rolf and when to use BCST. Working with the gushy. Adapting touch for adapting times. Sensing the autonomic nervous system, their training programs, Thomas's Rolfing benches, and much more. So with that, let's begin our talk.
Oh, this is either Andrew or somebody hacking a Zoom call.
You both. Nice to meet you, Thomas.
Hey. Oh, there's Nikki.
Oh. Hey.
Hey, Nikki.
Hey.
I may fade in and out as my internet comes in and out. So
It
if
is
I
a
just
teeny bit on my end.
So yeah, it's been a while for us. So thank you for letting us get back on track, and we're grateful to have time with you, especially after such a long correspondence of emails. And so thanks for making some time to chat.
Sorry,
I'm excited.
I get a little delayed in responding, so I've done years and years of therapy with it, and I still don't.
I actually think there's something really nice about being less online.
Yeah.
More sanity, anyway. More ease.
Yeah.
And thanks as well. I'll say this, and this can kind of be a plug as well. Thanks for the bench. It arrived to Dubai.
Oh, how long did it take?
A while, because the U.S. postal system shipped it from Steamboat to Denver to San Francisco to Chicago to Cincinnati to Philadelphia, then to Dubai, and then then to Bahrain, then to Dubai, and then there was a customs where you have to wait a few days for it to clear customs. But it arrived on Sunday, and it's been used, and I think it's the first bench in Dubai. So,
oh, really?
Thank you for that. Yeah.
I sent one there some other time. It was way more expensive than what it cost you for some reason. Yeah. Anyway,
I'm grateful.
Good, glad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to thank you, Thomas and Gale, for coming on and being part of our podcast. And we're super excited to learn from you and hear about your experience as Rolfers and biodynamic craniosacral practitioners, and those are the two main modalities I know about y'all. But if there's anything else, and and at the first guests that we've had that have been together and that are a couple.
Okay.
So,
got it.
Yeah.
We like each other after a whole year of living together.
I know. I think
Together longer than that.
Well, I know, but we were, we're quarantined this year.
Yeah, but our life really isn't that much different because we work out of our home.
Right.
Okay. We're not very social. We go to the grocery store and hardware store, and the rest of the time we're outside. So it's kind of like, in a way, our life really hasn't changed a lot, honestly.
Yeah. Have you been skiing? Are you skiing much this year?
We're backcountry skiing. Decided not to use our pass because you have to ride a bus to get to the ski area, no matter how you do it, unless somebody takes you. And I don't want to get on the bus with everybody coming from all over the place. So we took a year off for that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, how has practice been for you in time of COVID?
Well, let's see. We were in Switzerland when we had to come home. We were teaching we're supposed to teach a class in Switzerland. We have a group of students over there. We go twice a year. And so we had to come back. We got back on March 17th, I think it was.
St. Patty's Day.
Yeah. And,
so that's when it's coming. You're on the race with COVID to land to the United States.
Yeah. And we ended up coming back later than most people because they said Friday night, the country's going to close, and everybody was trying to get back from the United States. Back to the United States. We didn't leave until Tuesday. And walking through the Zurich airport, which is huge, the terminal, we were the only two people in the terminal, and nobody on the plane, so it worked out perfectly. Yeah, it was good.
So, what was the workshop you were doing?
Oh, we're just teaching. We teach our biodynamic cranial series that we teach.
Yeah.
What's the second?
We call it Explorations in Wholeness. Explorations in Wholeness. And it's really an introduction to biodynamics. And the idea is that, when we first learned as Rolfers, and then we were interested. We met Dr. Jim Jealous, and he was practicing in Vermont, and he's one of the key proponent currently alive. That's kind of the
biodynamic
grandfather or something
sure.
like that, since some of his mentors have passed. We knew him in Vermont, and he was a client of mine for a few sessions. We attended some of his lectures, and we really just listening to him talk about biodynamics and the midline and primary respiration, we both just really felt it in our tissues the first time we heard him talk at the University of Vermont. So we were interested in that, but he doesn't train people that aren't osteopaths or MDs. So Michael Shea, who was a Rolfer, we got some information from him, a mailer, I guess. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that happened. Yeah. And he was teaching what he called fluid cranial work. And so we signed up for his, similar to you, Andrew, his 10 series classes, 5 days spread out over 2 years or something, something like that. Okay. And what we learned is that it's going from doing like direct vectorized touch, according to Michael Salvas, and vectorized touch, to shifting to just listening was a big leap. Because people were coming into our office say, "Oh, I have this back pain, help me with it," and we would have a strategy that would involve Rolfing. Okay, but jumping to listening to the health and trusting that they're going to pay us at the end of the session because we're not doing anything was a challenge, So,
well, I have to say that is such a big risk in the sense of where you came from Rolfing, very much in the tissue, and your clientele probably is used to that type of touch, then to kind of go to the other end of the spectrum where it's not so much in the tissue.
Absolutely.
And then in Rolfing, everybody's like, especially probably, sorry not to date you, but back in like, and it's still true even now, but I think that we've maybe there's been some more sophistication in the understanding that it's not more pain, more gain, that you can hang out in a listening way and still get changes.
Yeah.
But
you won't see that in the way the curriculum is presented, but there is some movement in that direction outside of the faculty, I believe.
Yeah. May we, just for the sake of our audience, can you give a quick or a brief overview of what is biodynamic? Like, how would you explain that to someone who's never even heard of that and might not even really heard much about craniosacral?
Yeah. Biodynamics is the study of the forces involved in incarnation and that influence the genetic expression in the embryo. Okay, and it's a study of those forces and how they manifest in the embryo and how they are continuous throughout life into the adult. And we can interact or partner with those different kinds of forces and movements, which literally created the body according to epigenetics. Okay, the fluids move stimulate the genes, which then make their expression. So genes don't act, they react, is one of the ways to put it, okay? So that those forces that literally formed the body are still present in the adult. And we can experience them as flows, different kinds of rhythms, and pauses. Okay, pauses are really important because pauses are a return to homeostasis where we can kind of regroup in a sense from say an injury or insult, go to a pause, and then we can reorganize back out to our original intention. Okay.
And to add to that, within this creation of we humans, that what has informed our embryos and our becoming people on the planet is, and part of how that all stays in balance is that we have this piece called inherent health. It's the part of us that heals us from being sick and that mends us when we get hurt. And all through our whole life, it is doing its best to keep our systems balanced and organized. And so another way to think about biodynamics is that the wisdom that's in the fluids and the inherent health that maintains us is what we can partner with if we are willing to not get in the way of that process by thinking we know more than the inherent health of our client's system.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I talk about, kind of like my elevator speech.
Yeah.
About biodynamics.
Yeah. So see if I can remember this. Fluids carry information. The information comes from the horizon or outside of us. The message is wholeness, and we experience wholeness through rhythms, through the various rhythms, flows, and pauses. Okay, so it's really a way of interacting with wholeness, which then changes and reorganizes the pieces instead of working with the pieces to integrate back into a whole, because we already are whole. We don't need to be integrated into a whole. We are whole because we're alive. Yeah? Wholeness is keeping us alive, and the function of wholeness with an injury or an illness or a psychological injury or culture is really what's keeping our form and our function operating as best it can. Okay, so and that's available for us in the adult to partner with that. The only and you can't approach. So we're talking about fluids, and we teach a lot about the fluid body. Is a metaphor that the traditional osteopaths, biodynamic osteopathy, has coined. Dr. Jealous in particular was, what's the word? Proponent. I'll say of the fluid body. Okay, and to interact with the fluid body, you can't approach it the same way you would do, say, Rolfing. Okay, because push on fluids. What do? Woo, they're gone.
They give you a little reaction back.
Yeah. So it requires one to be present. Right. So one of the things we teach is presence, and presence with ourselves, presence in relationship, like with our client, or here in this relationship, and presence in the bigger picture, the bigger world. Like all the chaos in the world, how can I remain present with all this stuff that can be distracting? Okay, and it's the same thing that happens in a session. When I'm present, then that expands perceptual possibilities, and then what happens is things other than anatomy can start to show up, like what? Flows, like fluids. Like rhythm. A strain. Oh, I feel this strain go all the way up into the neck, and I'm at the feet. The field can show up. Okay, because we're to be present, we have to put our rational linear brain in the background, which includes our anatomy and all that stuff that we've all learned and I've taught. Okay, And that can actually get in the way of our perception because we have this focus of our field. I'm going to pay attention to this right here, like the psoas, but the psoas doesn't exist in isolation from the rest of the anatomy and the whole body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
And for any of our listeners that already are listening to this and thinking, wow, this is some wackadoodle stuff, I have had the great pleasure of assisting Thomas in a Rolfing phase 2 training. And it can be frustrating for students who are wanting to learn more of a deep in the tissue touch and trying to, create structural changes. But witnessing how he was able to make amazing changes with his clients with such subtle work and with this impeccable ability to listen, it was amazing to see the structural changes that were able to happen without being so heavy-handed. So I am not just the co-host here to listen. I have witnessed it, and it is I've trained in a little bit of the up ledger and have been exposed to a great deal of the biodynamic. So I can understand how some people who are maybe new to this type of work and are stumbling upon our podcast thinking like, wow, these people are really far out there. I would just beg you to hold in open mind, open heart, because this is really cool, powerful stuff. And it's fun to be able to explore, especially from a Rolfer's point of view, or even in the deep tissue kind of realm, that it doesn't have to be heavy, that there's a lot of work that can be done with being present and listening and feeling into the subtle fluid, which I enjoyed.
Thomas, I don't know if you know, actually, because we've just mentioned this is a podcast. The name of our podcast is actually Touching into Presence, which so much of what you said is really aligned with.
Yeah.
So one thing to bring up is that several years ago, there was research. Finally, there was research done about touch, about how to contact the body. And one of the things that came back from that is that there is a tremendous amount of fluid in the body. We all know that, 70% depending on how old you are. And that if you interact with the fluids, you get a broader response to your contact with your client. And if you want to work with fluids, it's necessary to learn how to connect with the fluid body without imposing on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the part of the reason that this kind of a more subtle touch is profound in a lot of ways is that by doing some subtle work in one place, because of the fluidity of our systems, that information moves through the fluid field, and it impacts as many things as possible. Part of the inherent health of the system is we're working with it in this, that the information goes through the system and is used wherever it can be used, and the priority of who chooses what is healed in any given moment is our client's knowing, substance, and ability to heal itself. So that's part of how the seeming miracles sometimes happen. And so learning how to do more than just, knuckle your way into something or lean heavily into it in hopes it'll give up, you can work with it in a much more generous way.
Yeah. So a lot of the Rolf Institute does this, and a lot of other modalities or schools talk about wholeness and define it as body, mind, spirit. Okay. So it ends up being more conceptual. And wholeness actually doesn't have any divisions. So even describing it as body, mind, spirit doesn't do wholeness any justice, because you're describing it you're dividing it into 3 different aspects, and wholeness doesn't have divisions. Okay, so and it's a different way of thinking of wholeness. So we have this concept of body, mind, spirit, and the Rolf Institute and everybody said, well, we keep in mind we're holistic because we consider the body, mind, and the spirit in everything we do. Well, that's different than experiencing wholeness. And when you experience wholeness, then you get that the body is really is a seamless whole that doesn't have any divisions. And that sounds really wacko because we've all studied anatomy. Gale, we have 4 anatomy books. We have
5, I'm sure.
5 anatomy books.
Possibly 6.
We're looking at anatomy all the time. But that's a point of view. Okay. And if we operate just from that point of view, we're missing all of the body that's way more than anatomy. Okay.
70% water. What, that leaves 30% maybe for other stuff.
Yeah. So so it's actually profound. It blows my mind. I've been doing this for 25 years, biodynamics, and it still blows my mind to feel somebody's cranium change shape so dramatically. Okay. I had a client who was having vertigo and couldn't hear out of her right ear for her whole life. She's horrible vertigo 3 times a week, can't keep a job, or she's misses her work periodically. And to put my hands on her head, the right side of her head was flat and the left side was roundish, like you would expect a cranium, right? So I go, well, that's interesting. Maybe we just need a little more space here. I've worked with her for 3 sessions now. She hasn't had a vertigo attack in a month, and her head is now more normal. It's proportional on each side. How does that happen? It still just blows my mind, even though I see that often. Yeah.
Can we dance with that a little bit? So, Gale, you offered this that great information about a scientific study and how that there is some validity to this work. And, and just from experience of lots of people receiving positive treatment and healing things. But what you kept on saying was the information gets carried. And I kept on thinking like, okay, well, and the way you were describing it, I just kept on thinking of like this little letter moving down through the fluid body. But we know that the nervous system is our messaging.
Aha. Maybe not.
So,
maybe
right.
not all of it.
So again, I know I kind of in more of the nervous system tells us what to do. Sure. It's our brain to the rest of our body. Of course, that's the messaging center. But what else could there be?
Yeah.
What's the?
Well, the primary job of the nervous system is to determine if it's safe. Okay. Now, some people will disagree with that, but if our nervous system, we used to walk around where we could be lunch instead of have lunch, right?
Very true.
Yeah. So it's imperative for our nervous system to be able to feel the field. Okay. Be expansive. Can I feel what's behind me? Can I hear? Can I listen? Can I sense? Whatever kinds of senses that one needs to be able to protect oneself when you are lunch. Okay. And this is still available to us. Okay. So the nervous system is true. It gives us information, but it doesn't reorganize the body the way I understand it. You can interact with the nervous system and maybe, I don't know the nervous system work you've been doing, but from just a fluid or fascial perspective, the nerves are embedded in tubes, which are in fascia, right? So bringing coherence and flow and decompression to the fascia is going to do the same thing to the nervous system. And it may not necessarily go the other way based upon what I know and believe.
Mm-hmm.
So the nervous system is obviously important because of that communication, and particularly in integration and beliefs. Okay. But there's another aspect outside of the nervous system, the brain is linear. Of course, we can create metaphors and have images, but when we speak, it's linear. And linearity is not in wholeness. Wholeness does not have linearity. Wholeness has no boundaries. Okay, this is really hard to understand words, because when we talk about wholeness, you end up talking about metaphors, and metaphors aren't scientific. Okay, mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't know.
Well, the buzzword these days, I think these concepts that have been around for a long time kind of go through waves in terms of trend. Like, you know, for me in the fitness world, the psoas was like the buzzword. Yeah. And, you know, when we're talking about the nervous system, I think the polyvagal theory is kind of coming. So when you're talking about, you know, the nervous system, we like to orient to safety. Yep. I think that, yes, it's still the nervous system, but it's less driven from, I have a thought, I'm going to produce this action, that there's this whole other behavior of the nervous system that doesn't often get spoken about. And it is, you know, as you're speaking about this, thinking a little bit of like, and especially talking again about the anatomy of the nervous system, that although it's an electrical system in our body, it's very fluid. There are all these other possibilities. It's not this hardwired system that gets presented in the anatomy books. Great that we have them, because it, you know, gives us a point of reference, but there's way more to it. And and again, I've only dabbled in the craniosacral world, but again, my brain's kind of going through its Rolodex of what do I know. But but I'm thinking of like upledgers. So my first my first exposure to craniosacral was with you, Thomas, in my phase 2, when you and Ray McCall were teaching and, you know, giving all the students a little dose of what this type of work is. So when I went to, and again, not knowing really the difference, you know, Upledger was offering a course. I was like, oh, great. I've learned a little bit about this. And to my understanding, how Dr. Upledger got curious about this was when he was in brain surgery and working with the cranium.
Right.
And seeing that the brainstem had its own, this pulse.
Yes.
And a little bit, maybe the rudimentary of craniosacral is kind of that classic hold the cranium, hold the sacrum, and feel into the flow, the vibrations.
Core link, yeah.
And I mean, in a way, I think that kind of speaks to bridges what you kind of are talking about, that the nervous system is way more than an electrical pulse.
And the polyvagal theory is great. It helps to explain the autonomic nervous system in humans. Let's see, how do I say this? It's great because we used to, and I've taught that the nervous system is, we have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, okay, which is pretty standard, right? But what we've done, and that's can be more of the reptilian brain, but it's still present in humans. But we've added on to this the social engagement system, or the polyvagal, which is giving us information about safety based on gestures, facial expressions, all of that kind of thing. Okay, so it's valuable. One of the things that the polyvagal theory is really valuable for us is used in somatic experiencing, is to bring people to the present through experience. Okay, when you're present, like I'll ask students sometimes, how do you know you're present? Well, let's see. I feel my whole body. I feel calm. I feel slow. Whatever. There's a bunch of different kinds of words. Okay, and then the next question is, how did you get there? Okay, how did you become present? Okay, for that to emerge. All of us have experienced a state of presence, probably in doing our work, okay, as Rolfers or whatever we're doing in healing. and when we're present, then something, whoa, how did that happen? Okay, so then there's a tendency to want to go back and try to make that happen. Okay, well, it happened because I was present. If I try to make it happen, then I'm having an intention and a direction instead of just listening and seeing what the system or the body wants to tell me. Okay, so when I become present in my own sensations, then I'm not dragging stories from the past into the present and then projecting those into the future based upon what I see or associations.
Do you have another question about how do you actually know you're present?
Yes. How do you know you're present? And so, yes, how do you know you're present? And then from that would be, what's your experience of that?
But how do you actually know that what you know is of you being present? If that makes sense.
It does make sense. Yes. And so when I ask that question, almost everybody answers, "Oh, I've been present before," and it's a very similar kind of response of different words that are not thinking. I'm feeling a place of grounded. I'm feeling my whole body. I'm feeling around me. I feel more I perceive more of different things like that. So that's a good. How do you know you're present?
Because part of it,
I know when I'm present, my brain, my brain, my associated brain, my Jeff Maitland calls it the pre-reflective brain or thinking is parked. It's behind me, and all I'm feeling is myself and my client in the field that I'm with. Okay, so presence comes to what's my sensation right now, which then tends to disconnect us the influence from the past that influences everything we do, okay, the way we think. And can I put that in the background and just listen and find out, what is my client's body telling me? Okay, we can use our Rolfing as a way to get an assessment, like structural and functional movement. And Rolfing has been hugely important for us to look at structural integrity, movement. How does that integrity move through space? And what we see is grace from that and flow of movement. Okay, but then so that's normal. We look at what's normal, like, oh, we have the structural, there's support and there's depth and there's space, balanced spaciousness. Okay. How that moves through space brings in our structural work. But so that's our normal, that's our ideal. But what I'm seeing is this, and this guy's leg looks like it's tied up in his diaphragm. Okay, so that's a Rolfing assessment. But what do I do when he lays down? Okay, so Rolfing will teach us to go, oh, you're going to go through the series, or you're going to do a third hour line. You're going to work with the fourth hour to get his leg to drop out of his pelvis, or whatever those things are. Okay, and that's obviously been successful because we're still in business. The Rolf Institute is still in business. Sometimes I wonder, given the stories I hear from people who come in and what they've experienced, but then what do we do? What do I do when I put my hands on it? Okay, so I have this visual assessment that's a kind of that is based on anatomy and structure I've learned from a model. But does the body match what I'm seeing? Okay, am I feeling a shortness in this leg to the diaphragm? When I sit at the feet and I just listen, and the fluid body starts to tell me, well, one of the reasons it's pulled up into the diaphragm is because he didn't tell you they had a broken leg. Oh, I can feel this break in this leg. And, oh, did you ever hurt your leg? Oh, yeah, when I was a kid, I broke my tibia. Ah, there we go. So this bone has a twist in it, and he's still holding himself up from his foot up into his diaphragm. That's kind of a Rolfing way of thinking about it. But what do I do with that? I listen, and the body reorganizes itself, because wholeness doesn't like to have disorganized pieces in it. It's a whole, so pieces ought to fit in.
So I have a question, which is
lost you.
Perfect for now. Which
okay?
Is there time?
We lost you. We didn't hear you.
Am I back?
Yeah,
you're back now.
Yeah, sorry, this keeps dropping in and out. My question is, and this ties in perfect with what I was hoping to ask you, so I'm glad I waited, which is, are there times, like, do you only do theoretically listening, or do you also sometimes still drop an elbow and share and slide and do deeper work or more physical work? Is there a time when that is either more beneficial or just quicker, and you kind of mix and match, or what's your sort of take with that?
No.
I think
So no to what? Go ahead.
Yeah, let's see. I think I'd say first, doing this less structural work is probably faster.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's the first thing, because when you put your hands on the body and I use my hands to see where things are dense, tight, whatever. And once I do that, and I find I can move my hands in the direction of ease, and I find that place where everything sort of softens a little bit, and I just wait, the body all of a sudden, I don't know what it's like. It's like it stretches and it just goes, oh, and sighs. I don't know if you work on bodies that talk to you, but they do sometimes. Mine do.
Talk about weird, right?
And there's that sigh. And maybe if you say to your client, wow, that was an interesting thing. They said, yeah, my leg feels like it's twice as long or whatever. I have this sensation that feels like there's a wind blowing down my leg. They say these things. It can be like so quick sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'd also have to say that I don't know what Thomas's answer is. I think I know his answer. But I still have a number of times where the client I'm working with, I will move, I will decide, and I will figure out what I want, what's going to happen next, what I want to do. I will put my hands in the area that seems like it's in trouble, and then I'll find ease and wait. So how do you describe that? Is that biodynamic? Do I do that because I see with my hands more than my eyes? I don't know. But if you can not throw away the skills and bring on these other ways of being and presence, I think I know I'm present because there is nothing else in my awareness except either the melting of my hands and my clients into each other, or just the stillness of the moment. That's how I know I'm present.
Yeah.
So there's another answer to that. Yeah. But in just bringing myself to the area that I'm, that seems to be what's in need and waiting, the body just changes. And sometimes there's a little nudge here and there, to say, what direction is the ease right now? Oh, okay, let's go over here. But so in that way, it's not strictly biodynamic, because I'd be sitting there and I wouldn't nudge things if I was doing strict biodynamics.
Yeah. So I wrote an article, it was 10 years ago. It's called Bones to Fluids. And what it is about is the I'll say palpatory odyssey of Dr. Sutherland over 50 years, learning from these different kinds of techniques, which were indirect, and I'll talk about that in a second. So he went through this progression from direct to listening and developing just different techniques over a period of 50 years, right? So when we learned biodynamics, we were started as Rolfers, and then we went way to the 50th year that he was already talking about, right? And there's this whole place in the middle that the osteopaths worked with that would involve a little more direct interaction. Okay, they call it balanced membranous tension or balanced fluid tension. And the idea is that once you start transitioning into the fluid aspect of the body, you can't bring those touch skills with you and have any results. Okay, the biodynamic point of view about presence you can bring and apply to anything you're doing, any technique, any kind of hands-on approach. Okay, so you can bring the principles of biodynamics into working more from a tissue perspective. So Gale mentioned frequently finding ease. Okay, well, a normal muscle that's at rest should feel like a water balloon. Okay, because its function of contraction is not being called upon, so it has a different kind of form. Function determines form in the biodynamic perspective. Okay, so it's an assessment would be to, where are the muscles that feel like water balloons and where don't they feel like water balloons?
Exactly.
Okay, so I can take that information that I used in assessment before the session and somebody lays down, and then I can start to use my hands. Where's the water balloons and where aren't the water balloons? Oh, there's a stripe right through here that doesn't feel very water balloony. Okay, so I can put my hands there, and then I do little subtle movements until I find the ease. And then ease ends up being there's more fluid that comes in, there's more space that's taken up, and
it spreads.
And tends to spread. So we're always looking for ease, always looking for ease. Where we learned as Rolfers, and I taught for quite a while, is we engage, here's this restriction, and now we're going to push our way through it. Okay, and we can feel the restriction, but then come and feel the tissue as a whole between your hands, and you'll find this. You do this little subtle movement, and you'll find this place where there's this little starts to expand a little bit. And we've all felt this as Rolfers. That's what the change is, right? It feels like it spreads and gets more gushy. Is that true? Yeah. So
absolutely.
Yep. So if I look for the gushiness, and that will spread, then what it does is it spreads and it makes the parts that aren't gushy. Okay. Really scientific here.
Yeah, so that's the scientific term, the gushy. I think I'm gonna re-say this back in a different way, and please tell me if I'm hearing it correctly. Which is, the question I was gonna lead into. I think you just said it, which is my question was thinking of how do you do a 10 series more or less from a biodynamic, and I think you just answered it in that you'll work the territory or of each hour from a gushy standpoint.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
There you go. Yeah. We want to have coherent gushiness through the whole body.
Well supported.
Well, also, I think when you were describing the balloons and when you're describing the point where maybe not finding as the buoyancy, and then when you work with that and more fluid comes, what comes in, again, I know this is a buzzword, but it is what it is, of biotensegrity, that there was an area that was held for whatever reasons, but it was losing its ability to have mobility or motility, depending if we're talking about organs or whatnot, that you brought on this ease that then the body then can be in its more ability to expand and come together. The Rolfing community, what would we call that?
Resilience, adaptability,
Palintonicity.
Palintonicity, yeah. Palintonicity just means space.
Right, but promoting more space.
Exactly. What happened? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, and I think with Rolfing, yes, it's had this ability that's kind of known for its heavy touch, and I feel like, I don't know, with having this conversation, I'm kind of being drawn to particular bodies of work evolve or become higher in demand kind of what is the need of the society a little bit?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Definitely.
So, especially having these conversations, with people who've trained with IDA, there was this need to kind of lean into the tissue to wake up, to be like, you have a body and feel it. And now we're in that was a totally different time, but I think especially with all the technology, how the world has become more modernized, and who knows how things are going to be after COVID, and we've all gotten accustomed to Zoom life and communicating through the screen and everything like that, that there's going to be a little bit more desire of the listening and not so much input, because we have it coming at us constantly to kind of adjust to what was taken away from us of for the majority of the world, human touch and connection and closeness of, even if you get that good vibe of being close to that familiar face at the coffee shop that you're not going to anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, and there's also the within that whole idea, there's also that let's see, sorry, I may have just lost my spot in my brain.
While you're thinking of that, I can answer Andrew's question about how to do a 10 series.
Yeah.
So now when I think about, I have people come in and say, oh, I want a 10 series. I say, okay, that's fine. I think, okay, Rolfing 10 series. I go, teaching at the first, I think more about what are the goals of Rolfing and what are the principles, as opposed to, in the first session, you do this, second session, you do this. I mean, first session, the goal is to start to enhance the breathing. All right. Every session after that that's part of one of the goals also. And the territory is the upper body. Well, okay, enhancing breathing is hugely important because it helps the autonomic nervous system. Okay. So when in the 10 series, the classical 10 series, the first session is the first 3 sessions are superficial upper body, lower body, the legs we would call deep superficial. And then the third session was the middle. Okay. But it was all superficial work. Well, when I work the way I do now, I may feel some strain in the surface, and I will, instead of pushing through that, I back out even more. Okay. And as it starts to change, I might notice that, oh my gosh, these lungs are stuck to the ribs. Oh, does that mean I need to limit my my interaction with the first session because it's supposed to be surface? No, this is where it's leading me. And this tension on the surface is because of pneumonia that was in the lungs, and the lungs are stuck to the ribs and they're not able to move as well. That kind of thing. Okay. So this kind of work can lead you deep without pushing. And so then it's hard to stick to the classical series because it's a surface session. But the real goal is to improve the breathing. Supportism is another principle used that has served really well in Rolfing. My experience is I bet 70 or 75% of the people that come into my office have low back pain and they haven't fallen off a ladder or something like that. It's because of leg issues and the compensations in the pelvis. I have seen so many times, I saw this last week, where you could see side bend rotations, a torsion in the pelvis, and you could see they had a leg that was broken as a kid, and I work with the leg, and they stand up, and the torsion in the pelvis and the low back side bend rotations have pretty much normalized. Okay. Now that's not because I have magic hands, because that's what the body wants to do. Okay. And we have to become present to be able to listen to its message about how to do that, instead of imposing what we've learned from whatever different bodies. I mean, we learned 35 years ago, when I was learning, if there was psychological, if something came up emotionally, they just said, shit happens, deal with it. That's what they told us. That's what they told us as practitioners. Okay. Things have changed.
Right. And I think what you're speaking to that change is that there has been more support of empowering the clients and knowing that their body wants to orient to health, and that there's whether it's been given more permission, or the holistic practitioner world has just gotten put into check, that there aren't magic hands. So we're not like have these special powers, is that we have trained in a way that is nudging or offering or giving space so the client can lay there, find their presence, and find their own way to orient to health.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Because there's so much trauma, and trauma happens when we don't have resources, and too much too fast, right? So helping people to have choice helps to reestablish the autonomic nervous system and more parasympathetic dominance, which helps to reestablish boundaries about he's not forcing me. We are participating in this together. Yeah, it's a huge nonverbal conversation that creates safety. Once there's safety, the autonomic nervous, the parasympathetics, can become more dominant, and then healing happens, because that's the purpose of parasympathetics.
I want to actually talk about the parasympathetic a bit in the safety, but I have a quick something you said really affected me in a positive way, and I want to rephrase it back to see if I'm hearing it how you said it, and maybe a little more, which was that going deep for a superficial session, and having it be that even though it's not part of the technical territory and you're going deep and it's superficial, by going deep you're affecting the superficial, and therefore the deep actually is superficial.
Yes,
that was great.
Yeah, because remember this: if you think about the fluid body model, have you seen the video that Guimberto about strolling under the skin? Yeah. Okay. So the solid body, all the anatomy and all this stuff, is embedded and enmeshed and immersed in fluids. It's from the interstitial fluids to Rolfers were trying to get these gliding motions to happen so that the things aren't stuck together. So we have all these bags, and we have tubes. We have different shaped kinds of bags that everything solid body fits within. Okay, muscles are tubes and the tubes actually form before the solid body. The bones in the cranium form between the mesenchyme is one layer. The mesenchyme splits and bones form in between that. Okay, so the fluids are present before the pieces, and relating to the fluids then can take us to the depth of bones, because they are enmeshed in that. So if there's a fluid body, it's like Gale had a good metaphor about the pond.
The pond.
Yeah, say that.
That if you're by a still pond and you drop a stone in the water, there's going to be ripples that move along the surface of that pond until they hit the shore. However, if you have a big rock in the middle of the pond that's above the surface, if you drop the stone in the water, those ripples are going to go out. But when they get to that stone, their pattern is going to be disrupted. And there's a way that you can think of that stone as being the injury, or the stone is the thing that then disturbs the balance and the equanimity of the system.
Yeah, and
that's beautiful.
Yeah, and if the pond was a living being, a body, we have all these fascial connections. Okay, fascia is a seamless whole. We actually don't have divisions in the fascia. Okay, now Gil Hedley and other people, anatomists, are going to disagree with that, because we can dissect out fascia, but you can actually dissect out anything you want. and explain it that way, which is a whole other conversation. But if the pond were a living body and your hands were around the edge of the pond, those ripples going out, you could feel that rock in the stream.
Exactly.
Okay. And by interacting with the surface, you can affect the rock over there across the stream, because in a living body, that rock would want to become part of the whole again, would want to become part of the flow, part of the rhythm, instead of disconnected from that, and become more whole and back to the wholeness of the original design. So it's actually to untwist bones, like the tibia takes. I mean, we live in a town where there are a lot of people who throw themselves off their mountain bikes and slam on the mountain, and so we have lots of leg injuries and things like that. And you can feel a bones get tight. Bones are another form of fascia. The fascia forms first, the fluids, and then the bones form out of that. And they're actually the characteristics of fascia: the elasticity, strength. I can't remember the other words I'm looking for right now. But bones are another form of fascia, so we can approach them the same way. And you put your fingers on the tibia very lightly and listen, and it starts to twist. It starts to turn. It might get longer. It might do this. It might do that. And sometimes you feel, oh, there it connects through, and all of a sudden you just feel this fluid. Feel it move out through the bone. Okay, so you can work deeply from the surface because the fluids it's a seamless whole that we can interact with and connect with all the way through the body. And that's a real key part of biodynamics, is the fluids.
And the ability to have your contacts so you don't intrude on the fluids. You partner, you connect with them, you work with them, you give them the credit they deserve for being the healing aspect of the system. So
and when we were sort of talking about the nervous system, we just kind of hopped into it. I'd love to kind of hear your going along with this, because when I work with people from a more biodynamic perspective, what I say is I'm feeling the nervous system. Now, whether or not what exactly I'm feeling is, up for speculation. I believe that nervous system has a pattern that travels through whether it's the fascia or the fluid, that has a tone, has a sense to it. Can you speak about that a bit?
Yeah.
I was saying that sort of talks about what I couldn't remember I was going to say about the nervous system.
Okay.
And so I'll just say that part of the quality of touch and the ability to have a broad range of touch is that right now, particularly after last year, but for quite a long time, there's so much activity everywhere. There's so much going on everywhere, no matter where you look. Even us in our quiet house, we look at this computer screen and things flash and move and all of that. There's a tremendous load on the nervous system because there's not much ease or peacefulness around us. There's flashing signs and fast cars and all of that stuff. So there's a difference of putting your hands. The nervous system will receive information by putting your hands on in a considerate and relatively gentle way, as though you want to, introduce yourself to it, as opposed to using a contact where I know what I need to do. I need to make that knee move more. So I'm going to press on it like this so that will make it do this action that I want, so that this knee will get better. And the nervous system may have to protect itself from that pressure or that strength or even that intention or your however, if you can have part of your work, at least, which is a gentle contact, then you can move into the system in a way that it can communicate with you, as opposed to having to try to get out of your way because you're dangerous, just like the rest of the crazy world that we're in.
Yeah. So for me, Andrew, I can feel an autonomic overload or a dominance because the rhythms and the fluids are faster and they're disorganized more. So if I'm sitting at somebody's feet, like a lot of times I'll start sitting at somebody's feet for grounding and just to say, okay, here we are and this is what we're doing. If I'm feeling there's no rhythm, there's nothing showing up fluid wise, then I know that we need to get some flow through here. We need to get some fluids. We need to get the life force in a sense to re-inhabit this. I mean, it's there because it's not gangrenous or anything like that. It's there, but it's not able to express itself. Okay, so for me, the rhythms are faster and more disorganized. They might be kind of swirly, okay, and that swirly, and it'll be a faster rhythm, like the cranial rhythmic impulse that was the first, usually the class that people take. It's about the cranial rhythmic impulse of 6 to 14 cycles per minute, or it varies, and just the fact that it varies, and it's a faster rhythm shows that the autonomic nervous system is dominant. The slower the rhythms that show up, the more this sympathetics settle to the background and the parasympathetic sympathetics come up and become more in the foreground, because which will then show a more coherent, more rhythmical and slower rhythms. So I know I have some students who say they feel a buzz in the system. I don't feel that. I feel the fluid rhythms. Other people just they don't know how they sense it, but they just know that there's something going on in the nervous system. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and trusting those intuitions is really valuable. Perceptions. Yeah. Trusting those perceptions is hugely valuable, because in a lot of trainings in the Rolf Institute, is one I can speak of because I've been so involved in it. People that have those kinds of perceptions are often not acknowledged and are talked into talking about things differently. We've had students in a lot of our classes who feel finally they've landed home because they can talk about energy and they can talk about the way they work and talk about what they see, but don't have to talk about specific muscles and that kind of thing, because they don't see or perceive or think that way, and they can still be absolutely great practitioners. So that's how I experience the nervous system, and how what I want to do is to help to calm it by seeing if I can slow down myself. Then their system is going to want to synchronize to a healthier, more organized rhythm and pattern and field.
Yeah, and that ties really great into what we were talking about before we started recording, where I was saying how I'm working with a friend who was in a very severe traumatic near-death experience.
Yes.
And I'd reached out to Carol Agnesian to get some ideas because he wanted a 10 series. And I actually decided I'm gifting him a 10 series because I'm using the experience for myself as self-learning on how to approach it from a different angle.
Beautiful.
But after the first session, he was so angry because A, sympathetic discharge coming out, B, perception of what he thought was supposed to be a session, exactly. and a day or two later we had a talk, and he just shifted. He said, "Oh yeah, I felt different." And beautiful. It was really it's been a gift for both of us in a lot of ways.
Somebody's had that kind of trauma. They're already in a place of maybe survival is too strong a word, but he was in a state of survival, like getting stabbed in the neck. I'd say, well, that's going to put me in a survival state, right? Mm-hmm. So when we're in a state of survival, that means we don't have resources, right?
Yeah.
And trauma if we don't have resources, we're more likely to be traumatized, right? So what you're talking about is helping the body to remind the body that you have resources. And these resources are slower rhythms, flows, and more spaciousness and more ease. Okay, and to then, if somebody doesn't have resources and you come in and you say, well, I'm going to push this body in a different direction. It's already going, hey, dude, I'm already having a problem. Don't you dare. Like if I'm upset, no resources, somebody comes and pokes me in the chest with their finger, I'm not going to want to, oh yeah, sure. I'm going to like want to resist and fight back. Yeah.
Yeah. That was part of my thought, was like, you've been attacked and now I'm dropping deep, and in some ways can be a sense of attack on the body, which instead of allowing for change allows for resistance.
Yeah,
exactly. And the body knows the information is in the fluids and in the what Dr. Sutherland called the breath of life and potency. That's all present in us, and it's taking that trauma and centering it in a place that didn't destroy the whole being, kind of compresses it. So we feel these compressions in these tight places. That's the health of the system, the wholeness, that's isolating that as much as we can into a place that didn't destroy the whole system. And so the whole system can still function as best it can, given that insult. Yeah. So that's perfect. And I work with kids. I was working with a kid that's really bad cerebral palsy. His mom was in a car wreck that shattered her pelvis 2 weeks before his delivery, and he actually had skull fractures. And his nervous system, he was all twisted and his legs were twisted and actually a right angle. And what am I going to do with this? Well, his nervous system literally just kind of pulled everything in and sucked the limbs into the core. You can't Rolf that. That's an extreme example of, okay, I'm going to listen. And after 10 or 12 sessions, he was able to lay in spread eagle position. And his legs were way straighter and his arms were way straighter. And he could lay there calmly. Before he was just all over the place. That's nervous system work, and that's not magic. It's just what the system is able to do.
But there's something you said there, which, and we do need to wrap up soon because I know it's late where you are and early where I am. But you said you can't Rolf that, and I think that becomes into a sense of, well, what is Rolfing?
Exactly.
And if you are using Rolfing from a biodynamic standpoint or other standpoint, is that not Rolfing? So it's not, because this is what I get people who say, I want Rolfing, and I say, well, I'm offering you that just from a different perspective, a different framework, a different than what you perceive it as.
Well, the last faculty meeting I was at was a Zoom meeting a couple of weeks ago. It was on teaching touch, and we're trying to standardize that curriculum. By the way, I got in trouble for teaching the way I did, Nikki. So the way I have been.
Wow.
Yeah, which is fine with me. I don't mind stirring up the pot a little bit. But one of the things that came out of that meeting was that Rolfing is vectorized touch. And one of the senior faculty said that, God damn it, when I was Rolf 40 years ago, my shoe size grew 3 sizes and my head size, whatever, and they worked me over. That's not his way. They were very, very aggressive. We cannot abandon that in our work. We have to have that as Rolfing. So from my perspective, they just defined Rolfing as vectorized touch. And if you're Rolfing, technically, you're not doing the kind of work we're talking about, even though the goals are showing up. Even though the goals that we would think of as Rolfers about function and structural integrity and all that kind of stuff. So I personally think the Rolf Institute is another changing point where, like we did 30 years ago, split up to the guild, where there's information available that can advance our work. And it's how do you integrate a whole new way of thinking and touching into an institution that talks about their work the way they have for 50 years.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the Rolf Institute is they're in this vicious cycle of having to define the work by the touch, which is unfortunate because I think, and you alluded to that a little bit, is the way I understood my training throughout all of it, up until my advanced training. It's about the principles. Yes. It's how you look. Yes, the principle. It's the 10 series is great for a learning map that I want to, as a eager student and want to soon to be therapist or practitioner, this is a great roadmap of how to create change. And I think that was the beauty that what Ida Rolf crafted was it's a make sense map of how to achieve structural goals.
Absolutely.
But what always in my mind, and that's what it was always mind boggling when I would meet people, because somewhere in the training, clearly I didn't attach to that rule, was that you're only supposed to do the 10 series until you do your advanced training, and then you can do non-formalistic sessions. And to me, from a marketing point of view, I was like, I don't know how to sell that. I just need to get them in my office and we'll get to work. And then, but I was always, because people, I didn't have people who are like, oh, I'm here to sign up for a 10 series. They're like, I have this ache and pain. I hear Rolfing works. And so I always held the principles in my mind as I was creating my non-formalistic sessions, which my inability to market actually worked in my advantage, because I would get all these sessions in, and then they're like, oh, I'm going to do a 10 series. So, great. I have like a 15th session on you. But
when somebody comes in and wants to do a 10 series, I'm really glad, because they're committed to doing 10 sessions, and that gives me a whole bunch of time to experiment and try new things.
Yeah.
and accomplish the goals.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So I've never sat on one of the meetings, and but with always the feedback that I get, it feels like sometimes these meetings often struggle finding resolution, and it's this ongoing historical stubbornness of we need to hold on to this identity of touch, which, my experience in the classroom, Thomas, you've had tons of experience in the classroom, the touch, the depth. And I'm slightly biased. I mean, I like a lean in. I like to receive it. Sometimes I like to give it. But that doesn't define the practitioner. Like the ability to listen, the ability to be present, the ability to hold the spectrum of touch of, especially if we're thinking of more of the Rolfing school, is to be able to dance in that realm.
Yes.
Is how you cultivate, I think, create really great practitioners in structural integration.
Absolutely.
Because and I think that's what's wonderful about it. I'm so grateful that I landed in the world of structural integration, because I am at the Rolf Institute, affiliated with the Rolf Institute. It's the only school I really knew about, being a Boulder kid anyways. So, but it's still, I mean, even in my work that I do with movement, personal training, I mean, very traditional personal training, I'm always like, well, these are the goals. This is what they want to do, but do they have support? Do they have adaptability?
Perfect. Yeah.
How do I, how am I going to create closure within this periodization training cycle that you're doing?
Absolutely.
And I think that's what, to me, is what defines Rolfing. And what's the beauty, the hallmark of the Rolf Institute, not let's, lean into the tissue really heavy.
Yeah. I mean, I might, if somebody wants to do 10 series, I might do two leg sessions before I get to the upper body. Or I might do 50 minutes of leg sessions and then go up and get adaptability up in the upper body. One of the things I'd love to be able to talk about a little bit is, speaking of marketing, is our what the classes we teach.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, please.
Yeah. So we have.
I'm just listening to you.
Oh, I thought you were tapping me. I thought she was kicking me in the leg for some other reason.
I really wasn't doing that.
I'm exaggerating.
You're used to that, and you always deserve it.
Wait a minute. Who's this guy?
I don't know.
Where did he come from? Anyway, so we have something we call explorations in wholeness, and what it is, it's we're introducing biodynamics in a way that mimics the palpatory progression that Dr. Sutherland went through to develop cranial work. So he started with bones, and then they found out that bones actually are being moved by fluids. So we learned about fluids and learned about looking at fascia in a different way, really fluidic, and then ended up doing biodynamics, which should maybe be more energetic. So what we found when we first started bringing our cranial training and biodynamics into our Rolfing practices, well, like, how am I going to do this? Let's see. It doesn't fit in this session. How am I going to pull this off? It's too risky to just sit because they're not going to pay me. They're thinking they're not getting their money's worth. The bringing it into your practice is the hard part. So what we do is we bring in these principles, we practice presence, and we start talking about the fluid body, but we start with the legs and we learn about how to get the interosseous membrane to be more hydrated. We're using this approach. How do we organize the bones in the foot and get the talus to be more underneath the tibia? How do we work with the IT band and all these different tubes and bags that are in the legs so we can get better support and enhance walking? So then a Rolfer, for example, could then say, well, I have a second session. I'm going to bring in some of this stuff that I learned in the explorations in wholeness. So we're building the skills of presence slowly and integrating them in slowly into your practice, not abandoning anything you've ever done, but bringing these in slowly. And in the process, we're developing the skills of presence, sensitivity, perception, and then we build on those. The next session we'll work with the upper body, with the arms and the ribs and breath. Then we'll work with biomechanics of the spine, and then we're leading into doing cranial work later on when we have the skills that which we can then work with the cranium in a way that's safe and this cranium is very sensitive. And you can shut people's nervous systems down really fast if they've had a head injury and you're too close to their head,
Wow, that sounds like such a fun and lovely class.
Yeah, so they are.
Yeah,
they're fabulous.
So
students like us.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Abandon what you've done, but let's broaden the tools and think about it differently and put anatomy in the background. And now let's feel for flows, fluids. Oh, it's not flowing at the knee. Well, what happens? We'll show how to reorganize the knee, finding midlines, the core of the legs, finding midlines through the knees where the tibia cannot be underneath the femur. Well, and doing exactly what we've been talking about, being present and finding the ease. Those are the two basic things that we teach. And then we take those principles and apply them throughout the body and practice and practice and practice. And then we get to the cranium, where then your skills and your touch skills are way more refined to deal with a very sensitive nervous system. So we build those skills up. And then you can build your practice and people will pay you. I tell students to just give somebody an extra 15 minutes and sit at their feet for 10. Okay, and tell them I'm learning something new and it's going to feel really different because then you don't have to worry about whether they're going to pay you because you didn't do anything.
Yeah, and I think you're slowly educating the client.
Yes,
the power of the ability of all different touches.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I have a funny story just to kind of support what you're doing is, much of my career living in New York City, I had all types of people I worked with.
Right.
And some were some very corporate, type A personalities and, and their body needed some stretching and, there's only so much I could do at the last 10 minutes of the stretch session. And, well, what do you think about yoga? I don't do yoga. I'm not doing that, So, And then, so I was like, all right, again, I need their body to have a little bit more ease to appropriately, assign them some lifting moves. And so, and I like to do yoga and do classes and stuff. And so I would put them in just be like, all right, stretch your legs here, put your arm here, tilt your body this way.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this is fun. Oh, this feels so good. What is this? And they're like, you just did yoga.
Right. Right.
That's great.
Right. Exactly.
But
Yeah.
so where would they find you if we have some listeners that love the sound of this class? They go to your website.
Go to listeninghandsseminars.com. So
Okay.
our intention is to provide a venue for people who are wanting to offer classes in listening hands, like Carol, for example, okay, or other biodynamic practitioners or somebody else. We have a great facility here that we can use and look at the Continental Divide near the Yampa River.
So you're hosting them in Steamboat.
Yeah, and we're also teaching in Europe. Yeah.
Okay.
The listeninghandsseminars.com. And
we'll put a link in the description as well.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah, good.
And I'm curious, is there are you offering any kind of any kind of COVID friendly seminars? Like, are you doing any Zoom things, or is this all going to be when we feel comfortable touching again?
We aren't. We've thought about it, and returning phone calls is difficult.
What? You mean what? I didn't have to call you, chase you down.
Right. He calls me 3 times. No, we thought about it. We did teach a cranial class. We have a group of students we've been working with for 5 years here. We did a cranial class last November, and we did it. It was COVID compliant at that time, and we all have small pods, and we know we're all safe. We're all safe. Probably not doing anything until we can actually get together. But it's what we ought to do is produce stuff that supports our current students instead of offering something new, because they're chomping at the bit to get more information. And it's been a year since like the folks in Europe, it's been a year since they've had a class, and they
actually longer, because it's been a year now from when we were there.
Yeah,
Thanks for taking the bait.
No.
I think you should. I think that it keeps I think what you have to offer is great, and I would love for people to just start to dabble in it, because I know, we're still a little ways from people traveling and be able to do workshops or feel comfortable in that kind of space.
Yeah, okay.
And I am an advocate of, use this opportunity
Thank you.
to just help people with like what books should they be learning, what YouTube videos, what other information that's already out there that or you could even create it yourself of
Really?
or call us, and we can have more conversations around something specific.
Oh, wow. Well, I encourage you. Yeah, thank you for the encouragement.
Yeah.
Because I've seen this just throughout the community of like, there's been either people have gotten really energetic and have figured out how to do it online. I've been blessed to have Andrew start this podcast, and I get to co-host and still be in the environment. But there's a lot of people who's, they've just kind of felt defeated and have nothing's going on for them. And it's there's too much great information about this.
Oh,
and I think even with what you're saying, just the act of someone learning how to like be like, oh yeah, presence. Oh, it isn't just about like standing still and trying to be blank in my mind. It could be like, ooh, I can feel the fluid in my body. I can feel my, as I move, what's balloony like, or what's,
sure.
Gale had a good word. Mushy.
Gushy.
Gushy.
Gushy, yeah.
Gushy.
Thomas, if it's helpful, if it's helpful as well, if it is something you're interested in, whether through this podcast network or otherwise, I'd be happy to. I've gathered by your email response that tech isn't necessarily your best friend, but I'd be happy to help set up, whether it's even just like an intro Zoom call for some sort for people
cool.
to, because I love this sort of work, and I'm
Oh, lost you.
He's saying he really loves. He loves your work.
This is really helpful and can help a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we lost you for a sec there, but
Yeah.
well,
I'd be happy to.
thank you for that encouragement.
That would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, so we can talk offline about what would a Zoom call look like. Maybe it's just something that I help you guys organize, but you do your talking and I sit in the background being like.
Well,
Maybe you should get Gale's number. She better respond.
Yeah, communicate with Gale. There you go. Oh, boy, I'm going to be getting grief for this shit for the rest of my life.
Well, I was going to say just that. You guys have to get ready for bed, and I have to get ready for work. I'm comfortable. I could sit and listen to you for hours. I don't know if our listeners would want to listen to hours talking. But is there anything else you'd like to sort of share?
I really appreciate this opportunity, and particularly having worked with Nikki and seen how she works and been in class with her and had conversations. I appreciate the encouragement that both of you are offering. Yeah. It's a huge topic, and we say all the time to students, it's simple, but it isn't easy. The simplicity is being present, and the not easy part is be willing to do that in your sessions and
stay present.
Yeah, it's a simple concept, but it isn't easy. So anyway,
one of the things that I thought of as we're going through is that one thing to help. One thing that I think is important about what we're teaching is that the things that we're working with are natural laws. They're things that people who come to our classes know they've been experiencing, but they don't know what it is. And some of the words that we say, they go, oh, I think they're talking about this thing that I don't know what it is. Yeah. And so just to bring in that awareness that the natural laws of how we human beings function and make it through the world, that we as practitioners can work with and help them to be their most whole and well self. That's a thing that I think is really important about this work that we're teaching. Yeah.
And I'm going to finish this. Hopefully, I'll finish this. What we're teaching
hours to go.
The conceptual and the principles are not new.
Yes,
the Chinese have been talking about flows and fluids for thousands of years. Okay, so this is another way, and also shamanism, walking in the woods, like we talked about earlier, when you could be lunch instead of having lunch. Those kinds of perceptual skills and presence have been talked about through all kinds of traditions, spiritual traditions, cultural traditions, and they come back to the same thing, those natural laws, and they're actually pretty simple, but they aren't easy.
Right.
Yeah. So thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
No,
Thank you.
And I'll get you an invoice sometime this year.
Oh yeah. Thank you for that.
Before your next text.
Yeah, for those listening, it's for his bench, not for this time on this. And I'll put a plug for that is that you make great benches, and I'll put a link out for that on this podcast as well.
I think yours was close to number 500. I've made.
Oh wow!
5 years, yeah.
That's awesome.
In my office is the first one he ever made.
Yeah.
And it's still going great.
When I was in Rolfing training 35 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's
okay.
Great. All right. Well, have a good evening there, and thank you for everything.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to us at Touching into Presence. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. You can find out more about Thomas and Gale at listeninghandseminars.com and rolfingcenter.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you'd leave a positive review of the podcast and subscribe to it through the platform of your choice. When you do this, it really helps other people find us, and we greatly appreciate your support. We look forward to hearing back from you and seeing you on our next conversation at Touching into Presence. Bye-bye.